I'm your host, Kyle Hiersche, and this is our 50th episode. And today we're going to be talking about the psychology of going all in on yourself. Because as entrepreneurs, I think this is a step we really have to take before we really get to where we want to be. I think every entrepreneur has that time in their journey where they need to decide, I'm going all in on myself, I'm investing in myself, and I'm going to make it happen, and I'm betting on myself. So, this really all starts with believing in yourself. And believing in yourself, I feel, also has to do with believing in what you're doing. So, you can believe in yourself all you want, but if you're not doing something that you really believe in or that you're really passionate about and you believe that you can make work, I think that's just kind of psyching yourself out a little bit. So believing in yourself is the key, but then you need to find something that you believe that you can actually do and accomplish and stick with. One of the biggest factors in going all in and believing in yourself, and one of the biggest factors in general in business, is investing in yourself. So a lot of people may say they believe in themselves, but the only real way to know if they really do they invest in themselves? Are they putting money into their business? Are they taking money that was supposed to, pay bills or, go to, going on dates or whatever it may be and putting it into their business instead? One thing that I've found is that people who really believe in themselves and really believe in their business, they pay their business first and then try to figure out how to pay their bills, right? Because the business has to be paid. Now, this is especially true for anyone running a business that has employees. And if you have a struggling business that has employees, you have to make payroll. There is no choice. And so, you kind of have to pay the company first and then figure out what you're doing later. If you are saying, I'll pay all my own bills and get everything I need to do and do everything I want to do with my money, and then if I have something left, I'll put it into the business, that's the wrong mindset to have. And unfortunately for entrepreneurs, especially when we're, the majority owners or the 100% owner, it's not a choice. We don't have a choice if the bank account goes negative to put money in to bring it to positive, even if we have other bills to pay. We don't have a choice as the majority owner or the sole owner to not pay employees and to pay our own bills instead. It's not even an option. We must do what we have to do to keep going. So that's where you have to have a massive amount of belief in yourself to believe that, I'm getting behind on bills or I can't afford to do this or that or whatever it is personally, because I have to keep putting money in the business to make sure that it survives, or maybe even to make sure that it thrives. Maybe you are doing okay, but you have a vision of something you want to do and you are willing to take a chance on it because you feel so passionate about it and believe in it so much that you want to invest more into it. It's the same situation, right? So whether it's absolutely necessary or whether it's something that you're kind of pushing on yourself just to make sure you go to the next level, at the end of the day, it's something where that's where the rubber meets the road, right? If you say you believe in yourself, well, put your money where your mouth is, and really that translates into actual money, right? Are you investing in yourself? Not just believing in yourself, but are you investing in yourself? That is what's really determining whether you really believe in yourself or not, is actually putting your money up. I think one of the big reasons that entrepreneurs fail, from what I've seen and heard, is it's almost more mentally than it is financially. I think some people, quit or fall or fail mentally first before financially. Now, as an entrepreneur, it's very easy to fall financially, but as long as you haven't fell mentally, you can always get back up and you can always keep going. But if you fall off or fail mentally, then it's over, and you're going to go back to working a job or continuing to work your job or whatever the situation is. So having a lot of belief in yourself is what you need, but you also need to, stay in that place mentally, even if you financially fail, even when the finances are down. We have to keep that mindset of believing in ourselves and putting up whatever money we do have left into continuing to push what we believe in. So it's a difficult spot for an entrepreneur to be in that's trying to make things work, uh, that's trying to keep things afloat. But what gets us through that is the belief in ourselves and the belief that we want to be an entrepreneur. For me, being an entrepreneur was everything, right? Since I was really young, that was all I wanted to do. I knew that's what I wanted to do. So the failures along the way felt really bad at the moment, but looking back, they were just little bumps in the road. And being younger, more resilient, and also at a young age, I started listening to a lot of business stuff, motivational speakers. I was reading books. These things prepared me a little bit for the bumps in the road. So I did have more of an understanding than a lot of younger people would about the fact that there's going to be failures and that I just had to keep going to get through them. And it's something that I still do, to this day, right? There's always struggles, there's always problems, there's always ups and downs. And we just have to keep pushing forward and keep moving. And that's what being an entrepreneur is all about. And so, again, to go back to today's topic, it's about believing in yourself and believing that this is what you want to do. Because if you don't strongly believe that being an entrepreneur is what you want to do, then it's probably not going to work out for you. In the game of entrepreneurship, you can't be 50-50. You can't be wishy-washy. You can't say, oh, I'm going to try this and see how it goes. And maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. If it gets too hard, then I'll just stop. I mean, we have to believe in ourselves, believe in what we're doing, and believe that this is what we want for ourselves as an entrepreneur. Because if you just go with, well, I'll always have a job, and maybe I'll try this, and if it doesn't work, then it's no problem, I still have a job. That can be a bad mindset to have as an entrepreneur if you're really trying to make it as an entrepreneur, as opposed to keeping that job or keeping the status quo of whatever you're doing. So I think that people who kind of dabble in being an entrepreneur are not really going to win. Now, obviously, just my opinion, but dabblers don't typically win, right? We typically have to go all in. We have to believe in ourselves enough to go all in. And a lot of the times that means not keeping options open, because having options a lot of the times will, steer you away from the original mission. It will give you comfort when you shouldn't have comfort. If there's one thing about, being a successful entrepreneur, it's going through discomfort. That's a lot of what gets us to the next level. A lot of what pushes us forward is the discomfort of no money, no success, being embarrassed or uncomfortable, making sales when it's awkward and uncomfortable. These are things that are out of our comfort zone, and we experience a lot of discomfort as entrepreneurs, and it's an emotional roller coaster as well, so mental discomfort as well. So, keeping our options open allows us to veer away from the discomfort. Well, this really isn't comfortable, I'm going to go back to this. Or this isn't very comfortable, I'm going to, go move on to this. So while options is, technically fine, I do believe that it allows you kind of an out to steer away from the discomfort. And if there's one thing that any entrepreneur will tell you, is that there is going to be a lot of discomfort along the way. Now, especially if you have no money, right? That's the huge discomfort, is not only are you struggling in every way as far as business, but you're also broke and struggling. And that really, compounds the discomfort. But I'll tell you what, I think for most entrepreneurs, they could tell you that is really the fuel that fueled them, was the discomfort and trying to get out of that, time of discomfort and try to make it to the next level. But I'll tell you that once you get to the next level, there'll be more things that are uncomfortable too. So that's one of our superpowers as an entrepreneur, I think, is making it through those uncomfortable situations, being able to keep going through discomfort, and move forward, and having other options. It just makes it so easy for you to say, well, this is uncomfortable. I'm not going to keep doing this. So while having a, you don't, I'm not saying you can't have other options, but like the classic saying is, if you have no plan B, then plan A is the only option. And that definitely rings true for sure. You know, Once we commit to something and believe in ourselves and believe in what we're doing fully, that's when the confidence comes. You know, it grows after your commitment, not before. So I think sometimes people will, think that once they have XYZ or getting this amount of success, then they'll be confident about what they're doing and then they'll be shouting it from the rooftops. But really, the confidence comes before that, right? It comes before. You should already be shouting whatever you're doing from the rooftops. So many entrepreneurs are silent when it comes to their companies. Sure, they might make a social media page. Sure, they might post a couple things on their own social media, and that's it. They're saying, well, I'm not going to go too crazy, and well, I'm not going to, post all the time, and I'm not going to tell everybody I talk to and make uncomfortable conversations. I'm not going to be that person. I will talk to everybody about my businesses. Anybody I'm talking to, I will tell them about what I'm doing, what the business is, if they could fit into it somehow, uh, giving them advice on whatever they're doing if they're asking for it. Talking about what you're doing is key. And the confidence to do that comes from you within yourself, believing in you before we're even talking about a product or service or business. Believing in yourself is what's going to give you that confidence. And then, of course, finding something you believe in as your product or service or business or industry is going to compound that. And if those two things are aligned, then you should be shouting it from the rooftops. I see so many entrepreneurs that are so silent about what it is that they're trying to do. You can't win and start a new business and get out there, especially something that has to do with customers, something that has to do with sales, something that has to do with referrals, which a lot of businesses are. There's no way to win unless you're out there promoting and pushing. And it starts with you. It starts with you, your friends, your family, your social media, all of these things. It's not going to magically appear because, something else happened with some random person that you don't know, right? We want to be shouting what we do from the rooftops. And to tell you the truth, when I see a business that's not doing that, honestly, it makes me a little bit skeptical of the business, because if you knew what you were doing was, if you knew what you were offering was a great product or service, then you would be shouting it from the rooftops. You would be posting it 24/7. You would be telling everybody about it. If you were confident in yourself and you were confident in your product or service or business, and that it was of value to people, then there would be no reason why you wouldn't be telling everybody about it. So if you're not, that's a little skeptical. Do you really believe in yourself? Do you really believe in your business? And do you really believe the product or service you're offering is something that everybody needs? If you're not willing to tell everybody you know, everybody you've ever met, and everybody you will meet about what you're doing, you may need to go back and rethink what you're doing. You may need to rethink it and say, is this a product or service that people actually need or want? And is this something that's being provided top notch? Because here's the thing: if your friends or family, or acquaintances use your product or service and they're not and you're scared of them thinking it's not good or not legitimate, then that reveals your problem right there. It must not be good or legitimate. If you're scared of people that going through your funnel or going through, purchasing your product or service, going through the process, you delivering that product or service to them, if you're scared of what they would think when they do that, because they may not think it's professional, or they may think you're dropping the ball somehow, or that you're not doing things like that they would want, you need to rethink everything, because that means that it's the same for other people. Just because they don't know you and don't have your phone number to text you and tell you that that's how they feel, doesn't mean necessarily that that's not how they feel. So I think that's a great reality check for some people. To If I'm not telling anybody and everybody I know about my business, if I don't believe in myself and my company enough to be doing that, then maybe I should look at what I'm doing, look at the products or services I'm offering, and say, maybe this is not correct. Maybe I need to improve this, or maybe I should be offering a different product or service that I believe in more and that will solve people's problems more. Because I think it's just a telltale sign that you're not confident in yourself, you're not confident in your business, and your business probably isn't where it wants to be. And most importantly, your service, your product or service is probably not where it needs to be if you're not willing to tell anybody and everybody to push them through your system and be proud and say, hey, I'm glad that are working with me. Did you like the experience? Did you get the updates? How did you like that automated service where we did that for you? You should be excited about people going through your system, going through your funnel, using your product or service, whether they're your friends, your family, or people you don't know. And if you're not excited about that, if you don't want to personally talk to people about that, if you don't want to shout it from the rooftops, then you probably want to reconsider what it is that you're offering. And I think this goes along with my next point, which is, for a lot of entrepreneurs, especially in the beginning, the fear of embarrassment is worse than the fear of failure, right? The fear of embarrassment because of failing, or nowadays, especially the fear of embarrassment of putting yourself out there, like on social media, maybe thinking that you may be doing things that are considered cringe, that type of stuff. I think the feeling of being embarrassed is sometimes even more powerful than the feeling of actual failing. Failing is temporary. You can get up, make it past it. But if you're stuck on being scared of being embarrassed, then you're kind of stuck and frozen, right, in the beginning. So as long as you're not frozen in the beginning because you're nervous and about being embarrassed, then you can actually do what you're trying to do, and then maybe you fail, or maybe you don't. But if you're too embarrassed to even start, or excuse me, if you're too scared of being embarrassed to even start, then you're never, you're at square one. You're not getting anywhere. So, I'd rather just fail than, be embarrassed to try to get my product or service out there to the people. And I can't stress that enough. I mean, if you feel that you're going to be embarrassed by what it is you're offering, or how you're going about offering it, or how you're executing it, then you should be rethinking it. Whatever it is that you're doing, you should be willing to tell anybody and everybody, and you should be shouting it from the rooftops. And if that's not the case, then you should rethink what you're doing, in my opinion. Now, if we do believe in ourselves, how can we actually apply this to our business? If you're out there saying, yeah, absolutely, I agree with you, I 100% believe in myself and my business, so how do I use that to my advantage? How do I apply that practically? Well, the things we already talked about, right? Announcing it publicly, pushing it publicly, attaching your reputation to it, right? I can't tell you how many times I've seen and even been involved with business partners where they're not out there saying anything about the business. And so they have no interest in it because they didn't attach their name to it. So just like we talked about money and putting your money where your mouth is, you need to put your reputation and your name where your mouth is too. So obviously I've had business with other business partners, and you can tell somebody's not fully committed because they're not talking about it. They're basically seeing if you're going to make it work. And if you make it work, then they'll take credit for it and they'll announce it publicly once it's a success. But they're just kind of sitting back waiting to see if you're going to make it real, and then they'll tell people about it. Then they'll attach their name to it. And if your name's not attached to it, then just like if your money's not invested in it, you have way less incentive to work on it and make it work and push it. So be careful of getting in business with people who don't want to attach their name to something or don't want to put up their money for something. And unfortunately, sometimes you find out about it after you get into business together. But those are two huge red flags of somebody who is not actually interested in the business, who's not actually invested in it, and who's probably not working on it at all. If they won't attach their name and reputation to it and tell people about it, if they won't put their money behind it, and even if they have no money, they're trying to figure out a way, borrow money to put it in, like whatever it takes. That's what has to be done. And if they're not willing to do that, that's huge red flags. And I can tell you probably 99% of the time that lines up to where they're not doing the work. They're not pushing the company forward. They have no incentive. They have no consequences if the company doesn't go forward. Aligning incentives is so big in business. And after a couple of failed ventures with, business partners, that the incentives were not aligned, it's one of the biggest lessons I've learned. And to tell you the truth, that's two huge incentives that if they're not aligned, then the person obviously is not going to work, right? If the first of the month comes around and everybody has to put money into the company to make the company keep running, and if we have a loss and this person doesn't do it, isn't willing to do it, won't do it, then what consequence is there for them not doing their job and not working and not contributing like everybody else is to make the company make money? If they don't have to attach their name to it and they're not out there telling people about it and putting their own name on the line, then what incentive do they have to actually do their part and make it work? And remember, when we're business partners with people and we're founding companies and stuff like that, typically we're not paying ourselves salaries. And so it's really like, okay, we're all doing this. It's probably part-time for all of us. Some of us may have other jobs. And so it's really, it's not like you're not doing your job that you're getting paid for. It's more like you're not doing your part in this venture. And let me tell you, if your money is not on the line and your name is not on the line, then why would you ever do your part? Why would you ever do voluntary work that you're not getting paid for up front when you have no consequence of not doing it? And everybody else at the business is working hard, pushing everything forward, putting up their money when the money is needed, announcing it to everybody. They're the face of it, being associated with it, attaching their name and reputation. Those are the people that are doing everything. And, I can tell you right now from experience of what I've gone through and what I've seen, it's terrible if the incentives aren't aligned, because the person who's not putting up the money, who's not putting up the reputation, who's not out there attaching themselves to it, they couldn't care less. They don't care if there's not enough money to pay payroll, because they're not going to put in the money to cover payroll. So they don't care about working 24/7 to make sure that payroll is able to be taken care of. So I can't stress that enough. One of the biggest lessons I've learned: make sure everyone's incentives are aligned, and make sure that even starting companies with people, even doing paperwork, make sure that you're verbally on the same page of, hey, this is what's going to happen. This is what we all need to be contributing. Not just paperwork, because in most states, a corporation, a LLC, these are laws that are, written out where people are supposed to do these things, but that doesn't mean that they do them in real life. And that also doesn't mean that just because they're signing that paperwork, that doesn't mean that they understand that that's what's going to have to happen. Sometimes that's an important, conversation to have. All right, so we have some questions here. We'll get into a few questions. Let's see here. Was there ever, let's see, question from Terrence. Kyle, was there ever a moment where you almost quit something that ended up working? Yeah, almost everything. Or at least I felt like I was going to quit, right? I think as entrepreneurs, excuse me, I think as entrepreneurs, we've all had those moments where we're banging our head into the wall and we want to quit. And sometimes we might even be considering quitting, that one thing, that product or service or whatever it is. Again, I would never contemplate quitting being an entrepreneur, but we may want to give up on that product, that service, that business. And I think we've all been through that, in that place where we're banging our head against the wall. And funny enough, sometimes that's right when something breaks through, right when you're saying, "Oh my gosh, it can't get any worse than this. It's not working," and then all of a sudden a payment comes in or whatever it is, that kind of keeps you going. You say, "Wow, maybe this will work. Maybe we can do this." And I feel like it's worked out that way sometimes. All right, question here from Elena. What was the scariest business decision you've ever made? Scariest business decision I've ever made. I think leaving some companies that have bad business partners, because I lost a lot financially. So it was a hard decision. But at the end of the day, if you're working with people that are untrustworthy or that are not doing their part, or, whatever the case is, if it's not right, it's not right. And even if it's a huge financial loss, sometimes you have to walk away. And I think so. I think that was the hardest decisions I've had to make, because it's a huge financial decision, and it's not just financial. It's about the work you've put in. We only have so much time on this planet. We've invested a lot of our time and energy and effort into this venture. A lot of our money is tied up in it. So that's a very difficult decision to make. And I think that's probably been my hardest decisions. Let's see here. When you started your first company, did you actually believe it would work? Yeah. I didn't know it was going to work how it works now. I didn't know how it was going to work. Uh, I didn't know the service yet, to be honest with you. I started the company to do one thing, and we ended up, the thing we started making money on was a completely different product, completely different service than what we. So, I would say that I think a lot of us do things that we may, think is going to work, or may think might not work. But again, my first business, even it didn't work, because it didn't work as what I set out to do. Right? This was the business idea. This is what we started the company for. This is the road we went down. And then we ended up shifting, and then we ended up shifting again, and then we ended up shifting again. And now all of a sudden, the venture that we had started in the first place is unrecognizable compared to where we're at, to where the name didn't even make sense, right? The name of the corporation didn't even make sense anymore from where we were, 10 years ago, to where we had pivoted, to where we started making money. And honestly, it was following the success. And really that meant following the money, right? What is working? And so shift here, that's working. Okay, now we know that. We'll shift a little bit here because that's working better. Shift a little bit here because we could make more money off what's working. And by the time that happens, way down the road, you're saying, wow, this is we're in a totally different spot than when we started, but we're moving forward. And I think any successful entrepreneur will tell you there's, success is not a straight line up and down, and it's not a straight line side to side either. We're shifting, we're pivoting, we're doing all these things so that by the time you look back 10 years later, wow, this isn't even what we started this company for. But it's where we got to because we kind of followed the market, right? What's working, what's not working, shifting, adjusting, pivoting, and getting to the ultimate goal of success, even though it may not be exactly what we started out to do, that same business, product, or service. All right, we'll take one last question here. Question from Damon. What did you sacrifice personally when you went all in? I've been all in since day one, since I was a kid. I've been all in 100%. Knew that this is what I wanted to do, knew that I would, not have a job. I wrote a book called Never Had a Job. I knew that was, not the life for me. Not that I think having a job is bad, uh, you know, but I knew that this is the path that I wanted to take, which is, kind of a crazy path. It's the most difficult path that you could possibly take. And I understood that because I was already reading, you know, motivational books, business books, things like that. And so I understood I'm taking an extremely difficult path, but I made the educated decision that this is what I wanted to do. So for me, I was always all in. And again, this is one of those things where I'm fortunate enough to have started when I was so young that it was easier to be all in. To be all in now, people have jobs, families, mortgages, rent, bills. These things can get in the way of going all in or make it extremely difficult. And I was fortunate enough to start that young and be all in that young. Immediately, I was all in. It didn't take time for me to go all in. Immediately, I was all in. But again, I'm very blessed and fortunate enough to have done that at a time where it was much easier for me to be all in than somebody with a family and bills to pay. So, just a little bit different situation for me. So I'm lucky in that respect. All right. Well, we will go ahead and wrap it up then. Remember, foundingwithoutfunding.com is where you can get the book if you're looking to start or grow your business. Read the book, foundingwithoutfunding.com, get your copy. It will definitely help you. Now, if you would like to be more hands-off and have us handle setting up your business for you and growing your business for you, we can do that for you with yourdigitalbusinesspartner.com. So if you go to yourdigitalbusinesspartner.com, we can help you set up your LLC, launch your business website, logo, managing your social media, your ads, all of that kind of good stuff at yourdigitalbusinesspartner.com. So if you want to do this yourself, go to foundingwithoutfunding.com, pick up the book, read it, and it will help you do everything by yourself. If you want to be a little bit more hands-off and have somebody handle a lot of that work for you, you can go to yourdigitalbusinesspartner.com, and my team can help do that for you. So with that being said, we will wrap it up. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We'll see you on the next episode.